Well, hello, everyone. This is Glen Guyton with another exciting episode of the Step Out Podcast. You know, I come to you with these podcasts to talk about interesting people doing extraordinary things. And so this episode, I'm featuring my friend Sue Park-Hur, and she leads an organization called ReconciliAsian. How you doing, Sue?
Hey, Glenn, I'm doing well.
Well, thank you for joining me. You like my sound effects? Thank you for joining me, Sue. And that's ReconciliAsian. That's the name of the group, not ReconciliAsian, but some of the work that you do does involve reconciliation. Tell me a little bit about the group and what you do, Sue.
Sure. Well, Glenn, thanks for inviting me to do this with you on your podcast. I know millions of people watch this, right?
Yes, millions of people.
Millions. And seriously, thank you for the invitation. Yeah, my husband and I, Park-Hur and I, are located in Los Angeles, specifically in Pasadena, California, LA. Yeah, and we run a peace center, kind of trying to figure out how we can help immigrant churches, particularly, and Asian American churches, to deal with the conflict within the church, and also embrace their calling as peacemakers in their communities, as well as nationally or even internationally, because we are so close from our home country. So what does it mean to be a peacemaker, a Christian peacemaker, with the identity that we have, is kind of the homework that we're trying to figure out. So we try to work with different churches to run seminars on conflict transformation, restorative justice, trauma and resilience. And then we also try to help them engage in intercultural kind of competency as well. You know, a lot of them say we can't speak the language, we're first generation, and we don't really know how to engage with our neighbors, but we're like, well, God has brought us to this country, and we have neighbors who are from different countries, and it's a gift. So with our limited, as well as the richness of the culture that we have, how can we be good neighbors? And then I think we also try to think about, well, what does that mean for us as people who are born from a different country or have different ethnic identities? How can we be peacemakers in the homeland that we're from? So,
well, that's great, Sue. And I mean, initially when I thought about talking to you, a lot of the focus in our country was on what was going on between the U.S. and North Korea. And I think those tensions still exist. We may have some other things now that we are thinking about in our country just because of our new 24-hour news cycle, and we get distracted pretty easily. But since you are from Korea, and I'm sure this hits close to home for you, the conflict between the U.S. and North Korea. South Korea is right there. Geographically, it's the same place. It may be two different countries.
That's right.
But I mean, what are your thoughts on what's going on now as a peacemaker, as a Korean woman? What is happening between the U.S. and North Korea?
Yeah, a lot of people really don't know even where North Korea is.
Yeah,
I don't know if you've seen that little viral thing that went viral. It's like, oh my goodness. And here we are trying to bomb this country. We know very little about it. And especially, I think our engagement, especially as Americans to Korea, we get like 2 sentences in our history book saying that there was a Korean War. Right? And anybody who comes to me and finds out that I'm Korean, they're like, oh, I know somebody whose uncle, father, grandfather, was related to North Korea with the Korean War.
Yeah.
And so that's about all they know. And it's often called the Forgotten War because basically we lost, right? And so we kind of don't want to really remember it. And it kind of got meshed between World War II and, of course, our engagement in Vietnam. So they're like, Vietnam, Korean, which one, right? Which one in Asia are we talking about? And so it goes way back, kind of our engagement with North Korea and South Korea. The division happened in 1953, and there was never a peace treaty that was officially signed with North Korea. We have an armistice that was signed in 1953. So, man, so for North Koreans, this is an ongoing war. We're technically at war with the U.S.
Right. So are the people like that live in North Korea, just the regular people on the street? I mean, what are their feelings toward each other? Do you think there's animosity between the actual Korean people, or is it just between like the leadership and the government?
Right. So like we have to totally reshift our understanding of North Korea, how the regime works.
Okay.
Basically, and again, this is a long story. It's going to take more than 20, 30 minutes for us to talk about. Right?
We have to sum it up for our listeners that may want to do research later on.
Yeah. So basically, they are trained, and they understand history as we have been at war. We have been traumatized by the war that happened almost 70 years ago. And they have used that fear for us to engage. So basically what they really want, the North Koreans, and they've also been taught to want, is peace.
Yeah.
They want to have a peace treaty with America. Do you know South Korea never signed the armistice? So the reason why North Korea wants to engage the US and not talk to South Koreans is because they never signed the armistice. And so what they want is the people who signed it were Chinese, the Chinese government and the US. Okay. And so these are the people that they want to dialogue with. And because North Korea is such a small country, they never get on top of the agenda, right, of the US, this big, powerful country. So this is why they make noise to say we want peace. And their way of understanding peace is you're not listening to us unless we have like a bargaining chip. Yeah. So the bargaining chip that works for us is the nuclear armament. Right.
Or the missiles that they're firing and testing.
And that's also misunderstood because twice a year, the U.S. military with the South Korean military, they have a military, what is that called? Military exercises.
Yeah.
That they start, and that never gets covered. What we see is North Koreans are shooting again without the context of why they're shooting. They're saying, "Hey, you're doing testing. We're going to show that we're just as powerful." Right. And so I'm not defending North Korea, but what I'm saying is that as peacemakers, we need to understand why they do the things that they do.
Yeah. Well, that's what I always tell people. And that's part of my message. Part of the work that I do, Sue, is with helping to spread cultural competence and looking at change in a way of how culture rolls into it. Sometimes we want to change things or do things differently, but if we don't understand the culture and context of what's going on, we can misinterpret it. So now I'm not by any means an expert on Asian culture, but I did spend a little time studying Japanese. I don't know if you know that was my minor in college. Yeah, that's awesome. My minor. So I know a little bit, just like a little bit about Japanese culture, and also how it translates into the rest of Asian culture. But one of the things, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that I see is that saving face, or like you say, being recognized, is very important in Asian culture. But the U.S. is engaging in a rhetoric that doesn't take those things into consideration.
Right. What the U.S. is saying, the soft talk hasn't worked, and so we need to notch it up a bit, right? Yeah. And we need to talk strong, because that's the only way that Kim Jong-un understands how we talk. Yeah. But first of all, when we use rhetoric, we don't know if it's very translatable.
Yeah.
And again, to a country that has been shamed, right? A country that has been just annihilated by napalm. What do we do, right? For this big country to say, we are going to use fire and fury like we have never done before.
Yeah.
they can't back away. All they're gonna say is, "Oh yeah," and throw little stones, right? To say,
Yeah, right.
and so, yeah, there is a definite different way that we need to communicate. But again, this is North Korea. It's not a country that works with all of the cultural assumptions that we have. And so I can't really vouch for the way they communicate as well. So they have their own unique culture within an Asian culture. But the face shaming, that is a big one. So we need to go back to engaging them in a way that's respectful, inviting them to the table. As Koreans would say, we don't break bread. You know, we eat rice together.
Yeah.
So we need to bring them to the table and dialogue and listen.
Well, say more about that. You say the Koreans say we don't break bread, we eat rice together.
Yeah, they say, so they'll say pap is rice, you know. 밥 한 번 먹자. Let's eat rice one day.
Okay.
And that's what we want to do. We want to invite them to a table where there's rice, you know, and that we would sit together and that we would eat together. And in any culture, I think that is an important image and also intimate fellowship, right? That we want to have, and it's also in the Bible as well, coming to the table together.
Well, I think, see, that's important. You know, as we think about other cultures and how we communicate with people, you know, it's so easy for us. And in all of the conflicts that I see going on, you have this cultural disconnect. It's hard for people to, you know, walk in someone else's shoes or walk in someone else's moccasins. And if you don't do that, you just assume things from your worldview. And that's a very, very dangerous thing. One of the things, I'm going to transition a little bit, but one of the things I see, you know, now, you know, we have the Charlottesville incident that took place. And that's about, you know, that's not the only incident like that has ever taken place, but it's kind of what we are focused on right now. Right. But you have one side that's saying, or a group of people saying that the Black Lives Matter movement is equivalent to the KKK. And I'm like, how do you equivocate those things? You know, as an African American, I'm not trying to say that Black Lives Matter means white supremacy. I mean, you know, black supremacy, or, you know, we're going to try to take over. No, it just means that, hey, we have as much of a right to live as anyone else. And some people on the other side from a different culture say, no, it's just as threatening or it's just as dangerous as the KKK. So I'm not sure how you get to that place, but somehow we have to find a way to reconcile with one another and start to eat. I like rice, so we can eat some rice together.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and do those things.
Yeah.
Well, this is my question though for you, Sue, as from an Asian background. You know, normally this is like a fight between black and white. How do you feel the Asian culture fits into all this? And yeah, what do y'all think of, I know you can't speak for all Asians, but, you know, what do you think as an Asian woman, as an Asian Korean woman about all of this?
Yeah. Well, you know, I think the U.S., we have, there was really one dominant voice, right? And there's one dominant narrative of how America was founded, how America has developed and grown. And now I think African American, there's a voice, right? The Black Lives Movement has given a different voice that might, and I think that's threatening for people who have understood just this one story, right?
Right.
And then here we are as Asian Americans challenging, also saying it's not just black and white, right?
Yeah.
And especially living in Los Angeles, where there's 10% or more are Asians, and we cannot imagine. Also, we cannot not talk about the Latino community here, right? And so there's multiple voices. Yeah. And we feel uncomfortable listening to different voices coming together. And I think for a lot of the people who are in the dominant culture feel like it's confusing, right? Yeah. There's like one harmonious song that came out, and now there's like, I would like to hear, there's some dissonance, but hopefully we'll come to a place where we can hear and we could harmonize, or we can sing a different kind of song. But when you only know this one song, right? it's really difficult to get into a different rhythm, to understand different beat and different soul of that comes from these kinds of stories and kinds of narratives. And so as Asian Americans, we, first of all, I think we need to learn the history of the people here, and not just the white dominant narrative that we have heard through our textbooks. But I recognize I don't know a lot of the stories of the African American community. I don't know a lot of the stories of the Latino community. And so I need to do my homework. And I also need to know my own Korean American story as well as the Asian American story. So there's a lot of different layers, but when I read those things, it's so rich, and it helps me to have three-dimensionality of this wonderful country that we're part of.
Well, do you feel like the Asian community gets pulled into like just to the white side? Like that's just the story that they hear? Do you?
Yeah, I think a lot of the times, I think until now, and again, we are how many percent? Like 5.8% of the U.S. population.
Yeah.
So we are still a very small community, and we don't have like a language like the Latino community that binds us together. You know what I mean?
No, yes, I know exactly.
Yeah. So like you speak Japanese, that means that says like nothing about your Korean, right? Your Korean language.
Yeah.
So I think for us as Asian Americans need to come together and we're still grappling with this Asian American identity. What does that mean, right? What does a Southeast Asian and an Asian American like from Northeast Asia, like what do we have in common? And so what happens is even with an Asian American community, there's like division, right?
Of course,
the model minority myth is what the white dominant community is trying to say to the Asian American, to the larger community. Look how Asian Americans have succeeded. Look how well educated they are. Why can't everybody else be like that? And a lot of Asian communities have bought into that, going like,
like we're like, is it a kind of superiority thing? Like we've made it.
Yeah, we've bought into that narrative again, that dominant narrative that we have heard and have been approved by the larger community. So what we have, but again, they're also, we can't just lump the whole Asian American community in one. But there is a resounding, especially the younger generation saying, we have failed to stand in solidarity with other people of color. We need to understand and we need to stand in solidarity with them. And so there's a growing movement of people who are no longer buying into the model minority myth, that we are part of the white society, no matter how much we try. The
model minority,
it does not work. And I don't know if you guys know even about Vincent Chin in 1982. Before it was just like, be quiet, like live that successful American dream. We've been traumatized enough from our own culture and our own history of back home. So let's just work hard. And if we work hard enough and if we study hard enough, like we're going to be okay. And we have seen throughout like history in America that no, we are the perpetual foreigners. It doesn't matter if you came here in the 1880s or early 1900s. We always get the, where are you from? No, where are you really from? And we get that. We're perpetual foreigners. And I know friends who are third, fourth generation.
They're like,
oh, my parents are from Jersey. My great parents are from, Ohio. And they still, no. Where are you from? Right?
It's a weird thing. And I think, we all are kind of victims to these cultural stereotypes or, that maybe I guess the dominant culture comes up with this, but it's like, like the Asian folks are exotic and like you say, the model minority. So it's always like
the other.
It's mystery, this mystery, like Asians are mysterious, I guess. And,
if you put it nicely, well, I don't even know anything, right? It's like, we could say we're mysterious in what ways, right? Or the women are mysterious, but the men are boring, right?
Yeah. It's a shame. It's a shame, though. There are so many things, and I know, and Sue, I think we get caught up in these narratives, and so I do feel like at times, like Asian Americans get, which is get this broad category, get lost kind of in the mix, and we don't see how best we can all work together. I think even me growing up before before what we've got. It's also this is what I'll say. It's also a strange relationship between African Americans and the Asian community.
Yeah,
it's like this weird dynamic. It's like Asians have been a part of the African American community, but like as service providers.
Yes.
And in some sense, it's been welcome. In some sense, it's been a negative thing.
Right. So you think about this year was the 25th anniversary of the LA riot,
Mm-hmm.
the LA uprising, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so we had a gathering, we had a forum that ReconciliAsian hosted with Bartimaeus Cooperatives Ministries. And what we did was we said, the African American and the Korean communities actually, pastors have come together before the LA uprisings.
Yeah.
We need to work together. And it's been tough because the only places where we interact with each other are in liquor stores, in dry cleaners, in these places where it's a very how should we say? It's a very short interaction.
Yeah.
Exchange commodity, and then that's it.
Okay. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we really haven't had this true engagement. And I think, again, we need to revive our relationship and our connections with, I think, through the church, because both the Korean community and the African American communities have like this place in the church, right? We believe in the same God. And so we have such an opportunity. And I hope that we will continue to build that bridge, especially as faith leaders.
Well, now this is kind of a side note, because what you said was really profound and deep. But my question is not that profound and deep. Why do you think why is it such a strong showing, though, specifically with Koreans in African American communities? How did that happen?
So Korean Americans come from a very monocultural and very small country, right?
Uh-huh.
And the only place where they have seen African Americans is either in the movies or the soldiers.
Okay, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that's like the exposure that they have had. And then they come to America into a lower, usually a lower socioeconomic. It's not like they go to like and so what they see are a specific group of people that reinforces their stereotypes of what they have encountered.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so not to excuse them again, like there are like so many wonderful things happening in the community, in African American communities, but the only place where they see them and interact with them is their store.
Right. You said like the liquor
glass,
store,
right?
or the I guess a lot of the Chinese restaurants are Korean too, right?
Maybe.
Or maybe it's, I don't know, maybe
it's a Japanese restaurant.
I think it's the Japanese. Yeah. But it is like you said, the store or places where they sell like hair care products and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. Hair care product was another big one, right?
Yeah.
And again, we have to understand why they went into the African American communities as with little income with little resources that they brought, they're trying to start up a business. They can't speak the language. They don't know how to navigate. And so they're like, where can we go to start a business? And they can't go to a lot of the places.
Right.
So where they go end up are places where other people wouldn't want to go into, unfortunately, right? Yeah. In kind of dangerous places. Yeah. And unfortunately, so again, we have to see so many different layers of things that are happening.
So it's almost like, when people say, well, the Asians are invading our communities, in some sense, it's almost like, oh, well, you should be kind of grateful because they're the only group of folks that are willing to take that risk. Like the white store owners won't come into that community or other ethnic groups. So the Koreans are actually, or other Asian communities are actually, I know, providing a service, but it's just a weird context because people patronize those stores. But then, then it's like they're angry,
and then they resent them, right? Yeah.
I grew up going to stores like that. I grew up in I don't know. I hung out in impoverished areas, like just because of going to church and working with different people. So I would go into the Korean stores and hear people saying crazy stuff to them, and the Korean store owners fussing back at them. But they would be in the store every single day. I'm like, well, why do you keep coming? Why do you keep coming talking about the person? It's just, I don't know. It's always been interesting.
Right. And then when we were talking during the forum, we also talked about redlining, right?
Oh, yeah.
So these African Americans are saying, like, why can't we get the business loans, right, to get in there? Yeah. And so there's so I think if we could have more Korean-owned business owners in the African-American communities, having some training, having some intercultural training with Glen and Sue, right?
That's right. Hey, let's do it, Sue. Let's get on that.
That's what and just letting them know, like, there's some basic stuff that we need to know, like how do we show respect? Mm-hmm. What are some ways that we can work with the African-American community? Some of the places, the stores that were protected during the 92 riots were people who, like, made relationships. Didn't have a lot of language skills, but, like, they loved the little kids that came, right? Yeah. And they were protected. They had, some stores had, like, they had set up even before the 92 riot, like, scholarships. Like, you are a smart boy. Go and, like, you know, if you graduate from high school and you get into a college, I give you $500. And, it really gave them an incentive. Yeah. And so building community, where, love transcends language, right? Yeah,
that's great.
How do we do that?
Yeah, love transcends language. I like that. Yeah, I think that's part of it. Building community, building relationships. And it's not going to happen, Sue, I don't think, marching around the statue of Robert E. Lee. I don't know what to. I have mixed feelings about this. I've talked to some people, like, what happened in Charlotte. This is just my opinion. I don't think people of color are the ones that should be at an anti-white supremacist march. I think that's something white people need to sort out amongst themselves. But we had one of our staff people that worked for the organization I work for. They went, and it's a white female. She went, her and her husband. They participated. They volunteered. I said, hey, I'm so glad that you did that. But for me, it would have been a totally different experience, especially as an African American male. Yes, I think being in that environment with white supremacists, calling you this, and that are armed, that are there to intimidate. Yep. I said it's probably just best for me to stay home and work at these things in different ways. And I tell the Asian American community that we need to show up. Yeah. You know why? Because we need to it's not so much for the white people, but I want African Americans and Latino brothers and sisters to recognize that we stand by them. Right. And so because there's so few of us, I think it's important that we are present. Yeah. We are present there so that they recognize, first of all, that we are Americans, that we actually care about these things that are happening because this is our home. And second of all, that we stand in solidarity with other people of color, and that people of color don't see it just as a black and brown issue or black and white issue. Yeah. That the Asian Americans are the fastest growing group in the country, and that they need to also be engaged and to stay woke. Stay woke. All right. All right. And I think that's a good lesson, Sue, for all of us, is that we can't forget that it's not just a black and brown issue. I mean, it may have started off, it started off, if we really want to get to the nitty gritty, it started off as a Native American issue. Yes. And that's the group I also feel that we often overlook, and we allow just systemic racism to continue to oppress that group, which is kind of sad to me. And I don't know. I mean, we have a lot of work to do, and the more that we can work together, the better. That's just kind of one other thing now. So what are the dynamics within this? We've put this label on you as an Asian, but I mean, it's so many differences. Now, how do you work at that between the different groups that we say are Asian? Right. Yeah. Well, I think that kind of came to us, not because we wanted to. Yeah. But because
white people, or I don't know, other communities don't see us different, right? So if I could say like, oh yeah, I hate, whatever, right? I'm not Chinese, I'm not Japanese. They're like, well, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter. You're Asian to me,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And so it's not a label that I think we have given to ourselves.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it's a label that we came together to say, okay. And I think again, Vincent Chin's case, when he was in the Midwest,
Uh-huh.
at a bar, these white disgruntled people who were blaming the Japanese car industry of making
Okay.
them lose their jobs,
Yeah. Yeah.
saw a very kind of boisterous Asian guy having his bachelor party at a
Uh-huh.
bar and blamed all of the economic issues on this who they thought Japanese, right? Who
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
taking the auto industry away. In
Right.
fact, he's Chinese American, beat
Yeah.
the guy, killed him, and goes scot-free with a $3,000 fine.
When did this happen?
See, 1982, dude. That was,
1982. Okay.
yeah, this was over 35 years ago. And
Man.
when this happened, the Asian American community, I think that was the first time they really organized and
Uh-huh.
said, this isn't just a Chinese issue, this isn't just a Japanese issue, because
Right. Right.
the confusion came thinking that they're beating up a Japanese guy when in fact he was a Chinese guy, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we realized unless we come together and have a collective voice together, we
Yeah.
can't do anything. So that's when they started organizing. And so
Right.
this identity it's a pretty recent identity that we have embraced. Now we're recognizing, goodness, it's always been the Chinese, Korean, Japanese kind of identity.
Right.
And
Right.
we're saying Indian Americans, right?
Yeah.
Burmese
Yeah.
Americans, we
Right.
need to Pakistani Americans, how do we come together, embrace this identity as Asian Americans?
Yeah. And see, in that group, so you have kind of like the Southeast Asians, I guess, is kind of more similar, maybe. I don't know. But then when you start talking about Pakistanis and Indian people, I mean, I don't even know how we just grouped those folks in together, because then that group kind of gets labeled as Muslims and terrorists. That's. I mean, so they have their own They have their own unique sense of oppression, I guess you want to call it, or confusion in the country.
Yeah.
So it's these labels that we've given ourselves. Black. What does that mean now? My daughter is well, you met my daughter.
Yes.
So my wife is black too. So for some reason now my daughter, everyone asks, is she Hispanic or is she biracial? I'm like, when did that happen? So this thing of race is just so weird, and people put these labels and things on us. But I mean, like I said, my daughter, both of her parents are black, but in school they think she's biracial. They think she's Latino. They don't know what she is, and I can't figure it out. It just shows you how arbitrary some of these definitions that we place on each other are.
Absolutely. And California is a great place where that line gets so blurred.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go to my friend. I'm going to a birthday party after I do this with you. Her husband's black, and she's Chinese Indonesian. So her children have a lot of identities to embrace, right? And that's kind of normal here. Right. We're like, all right, whatever you say. If you're Blasian or you're,
Blasian,
it's fine. And so we have to learn how to embrace kind of who we are, learn how to identify what is different about us and celebrate that, but then also not forget what we have in common.
Right. And these people, I'm sure not many white supremacists are going to be listening to this podcast, but these people that think they are 100% pure anything would definitely be surprised if they start looking at their DNA. I think I shared with you, I think I had a little touch of Asian, Asian in my DNA results. And of course, most black people in this country have a good chunk of European DNA. So, what's pure? When do you tip the line? I have plenty of relatives that you would never know were black if they didn't tell you. So yeah, so we need to figure out something besides these labels that we've artificially put on ourselves, and what's beyond skin color, and figure out how we're going to work together.
Absolutely. I think we need to work on culture more than culture learning, more than the color of our skin. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, Sue, if people want to know more about your work, how can they do that?
Yeah, you can definitely. We have a website called www.ReconciliAsian. So it's a long name, but instead of ATION, it would be Asian, ASIAN. So reconciliation.com. And you can follow us on Facebook. And I think those will be the best way for us to connect with you.
All right. Well, that sounds good. Well, thank you so much, Sue, for taking the time to join me today on this podcast. And I will. I'll be in California in September, so maybe I'll see you.
All right. That'll be wonderful.
Yeah. Well, this has been another episode of the Step Out podcast. Thank you all for joining me, and have a great day.